Welcome to Tanya Today. Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We say hello, as we do every day, letting people to get on. Then we can begin learning together. To Liba and Davida in New York, good morning. Usher is with us in Memphis, Tennessee. Good morning. Darren in the Philippines, good evening. June, even later for you. Good night in Australia. Clem also in Brisbane, Australia. Welcome. Very late. Andrea in Phoenix, Boker Tov. Simcha is with us in Florida. Welcome. John in North Carolina, good morning. Robert, shalom to you in Boston. Eugenia, Boker Tov in Calgary. TJ, also in Australia, good evening. Susan, good morning in Scranton. Lori is with us. Welcome, I forget from where. Michael, good afternoon in Germany. David is with us in California. It's bright and early. Batya, David, here in Montreal. Welcome. In Pennsylvania, Gary has joined us. In Indonesia, Dam is with us. Tim in Texas. AJ, welcome. Mark in, I'm not certain where. Another Mark with a C. Boker Tov in Santa Rosa, welcome back. Russ in Florida, in Boca, welcome. Diane in, I don't know if in Connecticut right now or somewhere. Yeah. Anna is with us in Budapest. Elaine in Georgia. Jay in Guelph, Ontario. All right, beautiful. In Clubhouse, we have Batya with us in Vilma, Michelle, Celeste, Adam, Tia, Eliana, Andrea, David, Tim, Chaya, Margot, Marcy, Moshe, and Boss. Okay. And Instagram, we have with us Crystal in Australia, Yenta Telebenta, Marlene, Akoy in Peru, Guy, and a couple others I can't make out exactly. Okay. Michael, also welcome. We begin the fifth book called Kuntras Achrein. Kuntras means like a pamphlet. Achrein, the final, the last one. The later booklet on several chapters. This is something that was added by the sons of the Alter Rebbe. And this is primarily going into deeper issues that we had previously in the first book of Sefer Shalbeinanim. Things from the Zohar, the Eitz Chaim, the pre-Eitz Chaim, that we quoted, mystical teachings that seem to have some contradictory ideas, I guess, in other places that were quoted previously in Tanya. So we're going to go through some more Kabbalistic kind of ideas. So hold on for the journey to understand, again, some kind of contradiction. So let's get into the meat. Two questions that we will deal with over here is, how is it that when you're studying you're reading the narratives of the Torah, the stories themselves, that one would be connected to the divine wisdom, to Chochmei Ilah? And second question, what does it mean in the statement of the Zohar that thought accomplishes nothing? In other words, if one merely thinks words of Torah or words of prayer, they don't affect anything. You need to vocalize it. But what does it mean that it doesn't affect? So, okay, let's get into this. Those are the two basic questions we're going to deal with today. So, to understand how a person reading the narratives in the Torah becomes connected with Chachma Ilah, supernal wisdom. Now, to give the proper context over here, as we learned in the first part of Tanya in chapter 5, that when there is a dispute between two litigants, between Reuben and Shimon, one says this and one says that, and that's brought before Jewish judges to adjudicate, and the law is such and such. Well, that law, of course, proper judges, and is the will of God, and the rationale behind it is the wisdom of God. But if you're reading a narrative in the Torah that there's no will of God in it, in other words, an adjudication of a law, and there's no deeper understanding than the story itself, because, for example, the Alter Rebbe in the first part of Tanya did bring Jacob when he first met Rachel, she was a shepherd with her flock, and he moved the big boulder in order to allow her and the other shepherds to have water, and he kissed her and cried. So, a simple story. Now, of course, there's a very deep meaning that we learned that Yaakov is the concept of compassion, and he's was trying to unite with the heavenly compassion. That's what the kiss of Rachel was, in order to bring down infinite compassion from God. Now that's a deep mystical idea, and so on and so forth. But if you're reading this story just as a story, so there's no divine wisdom seemingly in the story. What's divine over here? The story is a story. Simple. Again, if you're reading it simply, it's that how are then you bound up with supernal wisdom? When you take a lesson from the story, when you, as we just gave a deeper mystical idea behind that story, so that we get. But if you're not reading it that way, just simply. So the Alter Rebbe explains. He says that when we engage in Torah over here, whatever the Torah is, our likeness above, supernal man, also engages in Torah. And as a result, even if we're only reading the narrative of the Torah without understanding the deeper meaning behind the narrative, but just as a narrative again, that's the point over here. As a result, we're connected to the supernal wisdom in as much as the person's likeness above is bound up to supernal wisdom. Because we have our likeness called supernal man above, the spiritual counterpart of us down here, of the divine above, just as we are made up of 10 powers of the soul. So this is the 10 partsufim, the 10 faces, the 10 components and spheroids that are the makeup of supernal man. And so that's our likeness above. We're learning down here. We read the narrative down here. We're connected with that. And that likeness is connected with supernal wisdom. Now, the problem with this is that it's only by the actual study is not the connecting us to divine wisdom. It's connecting us to supernal man, to Adam Kadmon, and through that gives us a connection to divine wisdom. But our actual study seemingly isn't. So the Alter Rebbe says that the study of the written Torah, when is this only regard that we only touch supernal, the supernal likeness of us above? That's only when our study remains in the realm of thought. But if we verbalize the words audibly, even though it's only a narrative, the very sound of one's voice enables the letters to from here below to ascend even to the highest levels of the world of Atzilus. Now, of course, this is pending on what kind of soul we are and how bound up we are. In other words, this is if you're reading the narrative, but you are totally like a righteous person, totally given over to the narrative, given over to the teachings, in such a way that you are one with it, well then, yeah, it's going to reach to the world, it's going to pierce when you articulate it in speech. Just the narrative itself, just the story itself will pierce to the world of Atzilus, as a tzaddik does. Now, alternatively, if we're not motivated by such a high level, but we are motivated by a love and an awe of God that we have, that motivates us. So now when we articulate the narrative, it will rise to the world of Bria, to the divine in the world of Bria, to the divine wisdom there. And if we're only motivated by the innate awe and love that the soul has, which is more likely in our instance, right, that it is something that is part and parcel of the soul, and that's sort of that inherent, innate love that we have of our soul, and that's what leads us to now study, and we articulate that study, so then it will reach to the world of Yetzirah, the world of formation. Now, if one only was compelled by merely accepting that this is, the yoke of heaven, so then it will come to the world of 10 spheres of the world of Asiya, right? In contrast, that if we do not voice, if we just think the narrative, then that study only reaches to the highest level of human accomplishment, and that is to the source of our soul, the likeness of us above, supernal man, that we connect there. So that's a distinction. Okay? That was our first issue. Now, as for the statement in the Zohar, it says, here the loy avid midi, that thinking achieves nothing. It doesn't have a beneficial effect. Now, we just spoke about thinking that arises, that when you think the narrative, it merely rises to the, to the likeness, right, of us, our spiritual likeness above, which is not the divine attributes in the various worlds, lesser than that, okay? But, of course, that is some kind of achievement. That is some kind of accomplishment, right? But now what happens, we need to understand the Zohar, that it says thinking achieves nothing, not even a beneficial effect, because it's missing speech and action. So the Alter Rebbe says we need to examine this a little more closely. Now, Because again, how does that fit with what we just said? That it reaches the likeness of the individual. So achieves something when we study and we're merely thinking the studying as opposed to verbalizing it. So it goes to our likeness, supernal man above, and that unites us then through that to the supernal wisdom. So the Alter Rebbe explains like this. It's not a contradiction, because there's two things that happen when we study Torah, or for that matter a mitzvah too, but here our reference point over here is the study of Torah. There are two things that are happening. One is something's going up. Another thing is from going up, there also causes something to come down. There's what we do that goes upwards, that ascends to the divine, and there is what comes from the divine back down into this world. Right? That's the distinction. So, when we only have thought, that thought is, though, connected with some kind of desire to connect to the divine in the thought of Torah study, then we elevate our Torah study above to the spiritual worlds. Something, as we mentioned previously, right? However, and this is the concept that we've learned in the first part of Tanya, that if you don't have a love and awe of God in doing the mitzvah, or here in our study of Torah, right? And as we mentioned, love and awe doesn't have to be necessarily a palpable feeling in the heart, but it could be the inherent, innate love that we have that's compelling us to learn. That's what's driving us to learn. And now we're just thinking the words. So as we've learned in the first part of Tanya, that it is that love and awe which is in our thoughts even, that we just think it, right? That we just meditate upon that this is, part of me, and that what's driving me, the fact that I'm thinking that it produces two wings, love and awe, two wings, that allow now that Torah study to ascend upwards, to pierce the firmament. However, although it rises up to the divine attributes above, one second. It rises above. Give me one moment here. Yeah, so it rises above. However, if it only remains in the world of thought, the Zohar, remember, said that you achieve nothing. What it means that you achieve nothing is that you don't draw anything back down into this world. In other words, the fact that it was a thought that was motivated by a connection to God, this Torah study, so it rises above, but it doesn't draw anything down into this world. The only way you can draw divinity into this world, which is ultimately the purpose of why we come to this world, is to draw divinity into this world, not just to bring it up, is through the speech of Torah, expressing it. That creates the drawing down of divinity into this world. And with that, we can understand that if a person, for example, says the Shema, but only thinks it does, but doesn't vocalize it, they don't fulfill their obligation. Because our obligation is to bring divinity into this world, not just to allow it to rise above, to have wings to fly on high, but that we should bring divinity into this world. That's what we came into this world to do. Now, with that though, you still need to have you have to have the good thought. In other words, you have to have the mindfulness of the love and awe of God in doing it, the positive intent that is in one's mind. Because without that, it doesn't fly upwards. In other words, if we study Torah without that, and we verbalize, well, it's not going to go up to begin with to bring down divinity into this world. It remains, so to speak, what's the word, kind of left in this world. So once, yeah. So in order for it to be able to ascend to the higher worlds, we need to have that motivation. And yet to bring it back down into this world, it's not enough, the motivation, the thought. We need the verbalization, or, like of the Shema, of the Shema prayer, of our prayers. And that's why mitzvahs are also done in the physical in order to draw down the light of God into this world. All right, we said a lot here. Let's unpack this a bit. And then we can open up for questions and discussion. So, even the simple storyline of Torah, we are connecting to the divine above. But that's when we verbalize it, the story. If not, we're connected to our likeness, but not to something greater than that. Hence, when we study Torah, the idea of verbalization is important. Now, you can't always do that, obviously. Like you're listening to me right now, and through that, there's a study of Torah. But we should provide for ourselves during the day opportunity that we actually, read the teachings. We verbalize the teachings. So in the morning blessings, we have that. We say in the morning blessings, a Mishnah from Peah, Elid Varm Shein Lim Shir. These are things that do not have any limitation to them, and we go through, speaking about different mitzvahs, and so it's part of the prayers. We actually verbalize it, so we make sure that we can verbalize some of our Torah study throughout the day. Now, most scholars did not verbalize everything that they were learning, because that would, maybe take a lot more time, perhaps, or whatever. But there is that, that's the concept that we learned over here. But again, if we don't verbalize it, it doesn't mean it's not ascending. Question is, you see, when we verbalize what we learned previously is that we are engaging through our speech, for engaging our physical reality, and our physical reality is animated. Our physical body is animated by our animal soul. So that means the animal soul and the body are now engaged in Torah study, in the physical level and in the animal soul's understanding. It understands now the teachings, but that's more of the thought of, the comprehension. But in verbalization itself means to engage the animal quality of my being. The thought itself doesn't engage that part of me. It's more the spiritual part of me. So when we verbalize, we're engaging more the humanness, the body and the animal soul of me, and therefore transforming it, as we learned in chapters 35, 36, 37 of the first part of Tanya. That's another concept the Alter Rebbe is not speaking about here, but that brings out this idea. All right, let's open up. Let's open up to questions and comments and thoughts. And I have on Facebook, before I lose the feed, let me make sure I get them. Give me a moment here. Reminder, Rambam at 1 o'clock. Also a reminder, tomorrow I will be beginning my JLI course, Outsmarting Anti-Semitism. Very exciting. If you didn't get a chance to sign up, please do at Chabad.com. David, is it to say that from theoretical to meditative and then practical? Yeah. Yes. Davida, on Shabbos we have huge discussions and debates during the Torah portion. Also, Levi and I have many talks and discussions on Torah in our home, and then I'm alone learning. Is there a difference in each situation, especially the number of people involved? It's all good. It's all good. Don't worry, just appreciate. I guess what we're doing is just appreciating the uniqueness of each aspect. But yes, continue in the ways that you're doing, discussing it with others, and reading it on your own, verbalizing it on your own, or with others. Whatever it is, it's excellent. Lori, does Torah study in Hebrew have a stronger connection than reading and speaking in English? Yes and no. Is every good Jewish answer, right? Yes and no. Hebrew is God's language, so of course doing it in the original is the best way, no doubt about it. But that's only if you understand. If you don't understand the Hebrew, so it's one thing in prayer, that you're standing before God and you're saying words of prayer and praise and thanks to Him, even though you don't understand specifically, that's one thing. But if you're studying Torah and you're reading the words and you don't understand, that's another thing. So when it comes to the written word, you still fulfill the mitzvah, even you don't understand. But when it comes to the oral tradition, the oral Torah, there needs to be a comprehension. So if you understand Hebrew, then by all means do it in Hebrew. If you don't, then do it in the English. And if you want to learn so you could, do it from the original, from God's language, then, do a little in Hebrew and do more in English. And then, little by little, you'll switch over. Excellent question, Lori. Excellent. Oops. Sorry. Okay, David. Okay. Any other questions here? So there's a distinction primarily about the intent, or perhaps it's not about the speech. So there's two things here. There is our thoughts, which is also a motivation of that thought, right? Which is the awe and love of God, that we can have the mindfulness of it, that allows what we are learning to rise up, to have wings. But then there is about transforming this world, making a dwelling place for God in this world. That is through speech, because that's engaging the the materiality of the person, which is their physicality, and that physicality is speech. So there's both things, as we explained. Eugenia, is saying Tehillim also part of verbalizing Torah? Well, Tehillim is even more important. If you read Tehillim without verbalizing it, then that's not fulfillment. You can learn Torah without verbalizing, because the main thing about Torah is comprehension, right? So if it's the written Torah, the main thing is that it's God's word. So if you verbalize it, the main thing of the oral Torah is understanding. So if you're learning Tanya, if you're learning the Mishnah, you're learning Gemara, you need to understand. That's the comprehension is the most important thing, which is in thought. So that is most crucial. Does that mean everything that you are, if you're studying Talmud, do you have to read everything? So there is an idea to do it, to verbalize and, to verbalize things, but it is not more important than understanding. So if you can do both, do both. Right? Okay. But when it comes to Tehillim, prayers, that for sure has to be verbalized, because that's not about comprehension. That's about actually the heart more. And the heart is aroused by verbalization. In other words, when you say to God, you praise Him and thank Him and so on, the verbalization of it allows it to ruminate in one's heart, and that you can feel more, right? It arouses the feelings. Someone once told me that it is important to say Amen out loud, especially during the morning blessings, and to collect the Amen. Yes, that's a good thing. Okay, Eliana, please share with us.
Yeah, just a question. I was wondering if you could maybe explain, what's the practical difference, and maybe you haven't already in certain ways, but, if there was two people studying Torah, one did it strictly just in thought, just in reading and comprehension, and another did it, with speech, what would be the practical difference? What would we see the difference in these two individuals or in their world?
If one is just doing it in thought, so it's rising above to create ultimately a divine union that it creates. Like every mitzvah that we do creates a divine union, so it illuminates that divine union. And that thought means a thought that's motivated to be united with Hashem, right? Through these teachings. But the one who verbalizes also, if they verbalize and there is sort of they're just motivated by self-glorification, for example, or just not by connecting to Hashem through this, so that it doesn't go up to bring anything down. So I didn't mention that before, but yeah, that would be the case. It it would be.
So would there be, like, let's say, intent is equal, everything's equal for these two people, just one studies silently, one studies, with speech. Is the one with speech going to see, like, more blessings or more prayers answered? Or, will there be an actual practical, noticeable difference in this world?
Alter Rebbe doesn't speak about that, but of course, everything that we do, all good that we do brings blessings. But he's not speaking about that over here. So from this I can't extrapolate or interpolate, anything of that nature. Are you going to see more blessings? Here he doesn't say that, but in other places he does say that. Yeah, of course, every mitzvah we do, brings a divine light into our lives that will translate, not in an apparent way though. That's not an apparent way that because I learned, so now I see. I shouldn't say that. Maybe we could see, but if we open up our eyes and we're attentive, we could see the blessings that we get in our lives, 100%. But it's not necessarily a clear, obvious thing. That's all. Is that?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Lori, would you say that bringing down is superior than rising up, as our goal is to bring godliness to this world? So, yes. However, you can only bring something down if it first goes up. Right, so the question is, it goes up, does anything come down? So that's we need, that's why we need both, where our thoughts are, or how we're engaged in this, and at the same time we need the verbalization, so things will go up and come down. If we just, as I mentioned, if we verbalize but our thoughts are elsewhere, or we're not like, and our thoughts are not one of connecting to Hashem, so then it's not going to go up. It won't have wings to go up, right? Hope that's clear, Lori. Good question. Isn't thought very powerful as well? Aren't we supposed to watch our thoughts? Yes. Yeah, definitely thoughts are powerful. Speech is more powerful though, right? Because, for example, if you have a thought on Shabbos to do something wrong, well, you didn't transgress, but if you said something that was not Shabbos-tic, like you spoke, let's say you had thoughts on Shabbos of, I don't know, about work. But then you spoke about, shop talk. So that's a transgression. Shabbos is, rabbinic transgression, that you're not supposed to speak shop talk on Shabbos, right? So, but if you thought it, not that it's correct, but it's not a transgression of Shabbos. At least the rabbinic law of transgressing Shabbos, it's not, right? It's not the way we should observe Shabbos, but it's not a transgression. It's meaning that the thoughts that we have absolutely are, have an effect, but they don't have the same effect as speech. Although the Baal Shem Tov at the same time says, in the thoughts of a person, that's where they're found. So we kind of live where our thoughts are, right? That becomes our reality. But that's vis-a-vis ourselves, as opposed to the effect, the consequence of things. All right, I think that's it. Let me just see if I missed something on. Okay. Michael, please share.
Shalom Aleichem.
Aleichem shalom.
Rabbi, I had a question for you. It's sort of related to the topic. That's why I want to be last. I already shot you with him regarding it. It's I've been scrolling through social media recently, and I've seen that there's a lot of those anti-Zionist campaigns, which say that Judaism says that Jews cannot have a state until Mashiach comes. But the Torah, especially the book of Shemot, tells us that we received the land of Israel, right? During the Exodus, right? Even before that, in Bereshit, it is given to our forefathers, right? Without the arrival of Mashiach. So I was wondering, where does that come from? Is it something that Judaism says, or is it just like something make-believe?
Excellent question. Thank you for waiting to the end so we could deal with it. Remember that there's a written word and the oral Torah. So in the Gemara says that once there was a destruction of the second holy temple, so the Jewish people we made a promise that we would not have a third temple unless it's with Mashiach. We would not be disruptive amongst the nations of the world. Were some of the, so to speak, oaths that we took. So therefore, there is a concept of going back to the land of Israel only in the times of Mashiach, meaning having dominion over the land, having autonomy over the land, right? Not being ruled by other nations. So this is where some people make a mistake, and because of this piece of Talmud, so they say, Jews can't be in control of the land today, and unfortunately, some of these religious people are fighting fellow Jews, and some people are even siding with enemies to the state of Israel, and even though perhaps their intent might be good, perhaps I don't know. I don't know what's in someone's heart, but the understanding of the Talmud is completely incorrect. It's true that the Talmud says that, but that is only when it comes to when there is no security issue for Jewish people. The lives of Jewish people are more important than the oath that we made that we won't, conquer the land back, and set up our own governance before Mashiach comes. Because if we don't do that today, to quote Golda Meir, she said that, if our enemies put down their arms, we'll have peace. If we put down our arms, we'll all be pushed into the Mediterranean. So, the well-being, the security, and the lives of Jewish people in Israel is more important than anything, as Jewish law says clearly, that pikuach nefesh, and when a life is in danger, we've set aside all other, even Shabbos. We don't, we set aside Shabbos to save a life. We set aside all the laws except for murder and idolatry and adultery, to save a life. So this oath for sure we're gonna set aside in order to secure the lives of the Jewish people. So that's a misreading of the teachings of the Talmud, not understanding it appropriately, and as a result, why they would be against Israel, Jews being in Israel in a manner of having governance. That's the basic idea. Is that clear?
Yes, Rabbi, thank you so much for clearing it up. After my last misinformation campaign, I'm not going to scout the internet for answers.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Alan. Please share with us.
Thank you, Rabbi. So, I have a lot of thoughts actually having to do with this. Some of them most of them in support of what you said, but some have difficulty. Well, I'm dyslexic. I grew up that way. I've achieved quite a bit. I don't consider it really a problem for me, but I've learned a lot through being dyslexic.
Right.
And one of the things that I learned is that early on, in the 50s and 60s, where there was little known about dyslexia and little support for kids who had dyslexia, I learned that I could find accommodations through various different types of reinforcement. In other words, I had trouble reading, but when I got through high school and college, I realized, especially with tons that I had to read, that the only way that I could take in the knowledge was not just reading it, but also using speech to reinforce what I was reading.
Right.
So it's the fact that it's really helpful to use other modes of reinforcement in order to gain the benefit of things like thinking. It's really clear to me.
Yes.
So, and in that way, I think that that's really true. Although I would say, and the Alter Rebbe, from what I hear, is stressing the need of using speech to reinforce thought, and that kind of makes a lot of sense to me. But I feel that it's not the only way either. There are other creative modes that can help in some way to reinforce thought. One thing that I do sometimes when I'm studying a parsha is that I'll take during the week, I'll take a calligraphic pen and using Stam script, copy those words very carefully, and thinking about the letters and thinking about the words, and that enables me to get to an entirely different level. It's not just thinking, it's the creative act of writing, which Sofrim I'm sure are clearly aware of this as well. So there are other ways besides speech to get beyond simply thought that are a Jewish way. So that's another thing. There are other ways besides speech that can be reinforcement.
So very good point. So like writing.
But can I just go a little bit further here?
Sure. Absolutely. Go ahead.
So the part that was disturbing was the part that you quoted in terms of the Zohar, where it says thinking achieves nothing. And I would like you actually to send me where that is in the Zohar, because I'm curious about that and how you interpreted it. Because I think, from my point of view, that thinking, as opposed to thinking achieves nothing, thinking achieves a great deal. I think critical thinking is what we're known for as in the Jewish people, and many of the mitzvot encourage critical thinking. The wealth of Sforim that we have through centuries is testimony that critical thinking is imperative, really, for us. And Yiddishkeit would not survive without it. And there's one other point in terms of when you say that thinking isn't enough. Well, for some people, thinking is enough. If God forbid, if you have cancer and your tongue is removed and you have no access to speech, then from the Hashem's point of view, I'm sure thinking is enough. If someone is paralyzed and can't use their voice, then thinking is enough. So there are situations where thinking is enough because that's all you have. So basically that's basically what I had to share.
Absolutely correct. right? In those instances, as the Rebbe actually pointed out in several instances to people who were, Israeli war heroes that lost an arm, for example, and they couldn't put on tefillin on their arm at least, or other things, and how the Rebbe brought out that just meant that they have in other areas greater powers that they can use out in divine service. So that point is 100% correct, Alan. Thank you for bringing that up. The Zohar, by the way, is in volume 3, page 105, and as the Alter Rebbe explained over here, that that was what's bothering the Alter Rebbe, is what does it mean in the Zohar that thinking achieves nothing? So what we explained was it achieves nothing in bringing down divinity into this world, into the physical of this world. So you need to engage in the physical of us in order to bring down that divinity into the physical of this world. And the physical of us is through speech. Now another physical of us is through action. So mitzvahs are done through action, but Torah is also done through action. And as you said, and rightfully so, Alan, is that when you write something down of Torah, right, it also is affecting and helping to bring down. So it's not, speech is the normative way because we're communicators, and Torah is, teachings to be communicated, but also to be written. Absolutely, also to be written. So both are a means to bring down divinity into this world. Thought achieves, because the thought means, where's your mindset? Where's your headspace? Where are your thoughts? It's motivating the thought. Which we mentioned about the love and awe of God, the wings, right, that allow the thought to arise. So when the Zohar said it doesn't achieve anything, it doesn't achieve in bringing down, but it achieves in bringing it up, to illuminating it as it goes and flies, in the metaphor of wings, right, to allow, as the bird is able to fly, with wings. Now, a bird is still kosher if it doesn't have wings, but it can't fly. So it doesn't go up. So meaning go up to the divine. So we need, so all aspects have their importance and their role to play, and I hope that brings greater clarification to the point.
Yes, thank you very much for your elaboration, Rabbi.
Pleasure. All right, amazing.
Rabbi?
Yes, Vilma.
One more clarification from me.
Sure.
When you said that the wings, the thoughts affect the supernal soul, that is sent to the body of the supernal man in the world of Atzilus, are you talking about Adam Kadmon?
Yes.
So does that mean that all the souls are then affected by that, the Jewish souls?
That's a good question. Actually, it's Adam. No, it's not Adam Kadmon. I'm sorry, it's Adam Ha'elyon. It's Adam Ha'elyon. Means supernal man. Kadmon means from the word like the first.
Right. That's my question.
Yeah. So
what
no,
do
it's
you actually mean?
Adam Elyon. I have to do more. I have to look more into that to get more clarity. The distinction. Adam Kadmon precedes creation. Adam Elyon is sort of like the heights of human spirituality, so to speak, that is not reaching to the ultimate divine. That's the distinction. Okay, so it's not Adam Kadmon, Adam Elyon. Adam. Kadmon is before, again, before creation.
Right.
Precedes creation. Okay? Getting very Kabbalistic over here. So,
Yes.
but thank you. Mordechai, before you share with us, I just have some things here that before I lose the feed, and let me, okay. Is it in regards to the government now or to the Sanhedrin, the government? What we spoke about Israel before. John, is the descent of the soul to this world a form of Lech Lecha and its eventual ascent, Ratzav Yishoiv? Yeah, very good, John. Yes, Jay. As per Torah, all the present-day human beings are descendants of Noah, Europeans from Yafat, Jews, Arabs, from Shem, and from Ham. This means the children of Noah are fighting each other, want to enslave each other. Okay, yeah. Then how should we be all equal before God in terms of creation and responsibility? Should they not? We got to do we got to fulfill what God needs from us and not what we want. That's the bottom line. So Liba's asking on Instagram if you're unable because of physical disability, then are your thoughts considered as your words? So yes, so you know, a fellow shliach, a colleague in California. You like that senior moment. Who was, I think it's through MS, if I'm not mistaken. It's complete disability. The only thing he can do is move his eyelids, and he has a computer or a computer that reads his eyelids, and he types and gives Dvar Torahs that way. Actually, yeah, types them up weekly in the L'chaim. Oh my gosh, come to me in a moment. And yes, whatever. ALS. Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, right. ALS. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Is it Yitzi?
Yeah, Yitzi Horowitz. Thank you, Rabbi Yitzi Horowitz. Right, who can't move anything except literally eyelids, and through that he's able to type up a weekly message. And you know, he can't verbalize anything. So yes, Shem should bring him healing. All right, folks. Beautiful, wonderful. Rabbi Ronnie Fine coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadesh in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. I just want to comment that we're moving forward, and how many we have every day learning is tremendous, a tremendous achievement that you are all accomplishing. And it's, for me, I must tell you, extremely inspiring. Keep it up. God
also,
bless you all.
Mordechai wanted to say something, I think.
Sure, go ahead. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Mordechai, I'm sorry. Oh, you're right. I'm sorry, Mordechai.
No, it's okay. It's good.
Go ahead.
So I was having a debate with a friend earlier today, and you know the whole concept of a Jewish soul, right? It's like, and I just first want to mention it now. That's why that'd be interesting to bring it up. It's like it's an interesting point, but I feel like it could be a limited idea because, like, you know, we know that the soul has 5 parts to it according to the Kabbalah, right?
Right.
Or the Tanya, it's 5 parts, and the difference between the Bnei Israel and other nations is that the other nations, like Bnei Israel, have a nefesh, but on top, but the Bnei Israel was given an additional part, which is like the ruach, and even some people within it have even very high level people have a neshama. So wouldn't it be fair or more accurate to say that a person has a ruach and that's why they would have the aptitude to want to become Jewish, to want to learn Torah, because for whatever reason their soul had this additional portion, in keeping the Torah was the only way for them to fulfill that. And the reason why I'm saying that's a big important idea, because when we just say Jewish soul, it's just like, okay, it's a Jewish soul, it's different, but there's a lot of people that have this additional part of their soul. They just don't know it until they get, an opportunity to get faced with the Torah in the real way.
Right. So, yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mordechai, for sharing that. So, the ruach is the spirit of the soul, the emotive aspect of the soul, which is an element of the soul, but not the essence of the soul. So it first begins, everything begins with the essential part, just like, in the development of a fetus, starting with a seed, and then from there it gets developed into, limbs of a body. So likewise, the essence of the soul is yechida, it's the highest level. And from there it develops into chaya, into nefeshama, into ruach, and then and nefesh, or whichever way, yeah. But it starts with the essence of the soul. So the essence of the soul is something beyond ruach, because again, ruach is the emotive aspect of the soul. Emotions are a product of, or an aspect of the soul, but not the core essence of it. So that's where there would be a distinction that would be made. Now, someone who isn't Jewish, for example, and like you say, they may be inspired by Jewish teachings and so on. So that soul, the Talmud calls it that when that person converts, they're called a ger. And before they convert, they're not called a non-Jew that converts. They're called a Gersh and Isgayer, convert that converts. Well, wait a minute, it sounds like kind of a circular talk. What it means is that someone who in fact ends up converting is because they have that essence of the soul, a spark of it, but not a flame of it. And through the process of conversion, from a spark you can make a flame. The process of conversion, ultimately through proper conversion of according to halacha, a proper beis din, then it allows the soul, that spark, to become a flame. Now, which spark will become a flame is only by the fact that who in fact in the end will convert according to Jewish law. But that's correct. The spark can be there. And maybe it takes a long time for some people, a shorter time for others, for it to become that flame of a Jewish soul. But that Jewish soul then becomes, that's revealed in a flame, is in essence, of it is the yechida part of it, which is sort of like that indestructible core essence. So I hope that illuminates. Is that
Well, when I always thought about the yechida was like more of like a surrounding aspect of the soul, right? Like it's more of like the external. And the reason why I mentioned it the way I did, because the Arizal explains like the nefesh as being like the body, goofy part of the soul, and then the ruach is kind of like this element, this aspect of the soul that brings light to the nefesh, right? So I'm saying that everything in neshama is kind of like this conscious awareness that the life force of the shem is going through the ruach to the nefesh. So that's why I said like the person who is connected to Yiddishkeit, because there's even sometimes there's people who are born Jewish that may not have this affinity either, and so we're saying that like that idea of like that neshama needing to be fed, or the conscious awareness that something exists, or even the unconscious awareness, I was trying to say that that's comparable to that aspect of the soul itself.
So the ruach aspect of the soul would be the love and awe that the soul has inherently, right? That's the emotive aspects. So that would be the love and awe that the soul has inherently. So and something we spoke about earlier here. The neshama aspect is the intelligence of the soul. The chaya is the will of the soul, that, and as you said correctly, encompassing, that it encompasses. Encompassing means here it's greater than me, right? It's greater than me. It's not limited to my understanding, which is neshama. It's not limited to my feelings of love and awe, which is my ruach aspect. It encompasses that, is greater than that. That's what the chaya, and specifically yechida, is a reference to. So yeah, it's correct. So the ruach part would be that love and awe that's innate. So, which is true, but that love and all that's innate is coming from the core essence of the soul that allows it to have that aspect, that it innately has that connection to God, which is, so it's correct what you're saying.
So Rabbi, in closing, because I know you have to go, how would you define the Jewish soul from that standpoint? Like the Jewish soul that, I'm talking about the real thing, like the
right.
sincere, yeah.
So, the Jewish soul is a part of God as opposed to a creation of God. And it is what it is, not by virtue of anything. You know, but think about it, this is very counterintuitive. Every other faith and religion, you are what you are by virtue of something, virtue of your faith that you have, virtue of your commitment that you make, and by virtue of the actions that you engage in. That makes you, who you are. We're having we're having a breakdown, a meltdown in Western civilization, all of civilization, but right, that people have no sense of who they are. So today, who do they become? Well, identity politics becomes who I am, right? Well, because I identify with this kind of politics, or I identify with this kind of value system, so that becomes me. That's not the Jew. That's everybody else. And that's everything else in this world, right? Your identity is, and that's why the envelope is being pushed. I can choose my identity. I can even choose, I was born male, but I'm choosing, something else. How can that be? Because there's nothing inherent. There's nothing that is a given. For the Jew, there is. And that is not, and that is their soul that defines them. That is a part of God on His terms, not in our understanding. And that's why it's not defined by neshama, which is intelligence. It expresses itself in intelligence, but not defined by it. It's not defined by ruach, which is the feelings that we have, because feelings may come and go. It's not defined by that. It's not even defined by nefesh, which is my behavior, my actions, and how I, act out my beliefs. It's to find something that is, like you said, encompassing, meaning transcendent of me, that's a part of God, that's vested in me by God, not by anything I do. That's a Jew. That's unique. It doesn't exist by anybody else's definition, by the way. Forget about, no one else's definition of who they are. Does that exist elsewhere? Is that clear?
Thank you, Rabbi. That's beautiful. Thank you.
God bless you. All right, folks. This has been amazing, as always. I thank you all for joining and be a part of our journey. We continue tomorrow, God willing. And for those who want to learn Rambam, today, 1 o'clock, and a reminder, the JLI course of Outsmarting Anti-Semitism starts tomorrow night at 7:30. It's only on Zoom. It's private. If you're interested, it's a 4-week course. Go to ChabadZichron.com. ChabadZichron.com. And God willing, we will. You can come and join us. Have a wonderful day. God bless you all. Be well.